Republican Roy Moore and Democrat Doug Jones waiting for the results, of course, hoping they'll come in quickly. It's been a remarkable race and an unexpectedly competitive one. Donald Trump won the state of Alabama by 28 points, but Moore has been weakened, as you know, by allegations of sexual misconduct. According to early data from Fox News and our voter analysis, the race is pretty tight. We should also note that Jones has made his own blunders, of course, sending out literature last week that many saw as racist. Our primetime coverage throughout the night kicks off with Fox senior political analyst Brit Hume. So, Brit, what are the implications either way? Let's say Roy Moore wins. What does that mean for the Republicans in Washington?
Well, Tucker, my assessment of that is very simply this. On an ordinary night, on a special election in Alabama, we would probably be calling this at 8 o'clock if we had exit polling for the Republican. But as you point out, this is no ordinary night. And my way of looking at it is that there are two missiles headed toward the Republicans in the U.S. Senate and those who may run for the job. And the only question is which one's going to hit them. Either, in the case of a Moore loss, they lose a seat in the Senate, which as narrowly divided as the Senate is, that's a big deal. However, if Roy Moore wins, they then probably have a political albatross around their neck, or at least someone that the Democrats going forward into next year's midterm elections will try to hang around their neck and around the neck of every single member of the Senate or candidate for the Senate, incumbent or not, throughout the whole season. So this looks like a night in which the Republicans really have no way to win.
Is it possible for Republicans in Washington to tell their voters, look, we're on your side, we just don't like Roy Moore. We're not on the side of Gloria Allred and the Today Show. We're on your side. It's just this specific guy is bad. Is there any way to convey that message?
Well, they certainly will try to do that, I would think. But you know, that would be what I would recommend if I were a political strategist, that you try to deal with the fact that Moore is among you. He'll sit with you. He's part of your caucus. He's a Republican. He's your colleague. And you can say whatever you want about him, but that fact will remain, but because you can distance himself as best you can. What you probably cannot do, Tucker, is refuse to seat him.
Right.
And then that brings then up the question of whether you can expel him. And my reading of that, Tucker, is that you probably can expel him. It takes, I think, 67 votes to do it. But no one has ever been expelled for the Senate for conduct that occurred before he became a member of the Senate. So it would be an unprecedented act. It wouldn't be easy. And, you know, what the best I think the Republicans could hope for would be, if he's elected, the matter is referred to the Ethics Committee. Now, Roy Moore is saying that it would be unconstitutional for the Ethics Committee to take it up, but I don't think that argument's going to carry the day. At which point the Republicans can pray that this whole furor over sexual harassment and the rest of it will die down, and the Ethics Committee will drag on, and there will be no news about it, really, and the whole furor will die down. That's something they can hope for. I'm not sure that's a winning strategy, but it's something.
Right.
And then at some point, the Ethics Committee will report with a recommendation, and we can see where it goes. But either way, this is not a good situation.
It's a big deal to overturn the express will of voters, it seems to me. So really quickly, Jones is being attacked by Republicans as a pretty conventional liberal, and I think that's right. I wonder if Jones had come out as pro-life as opposed to abortion, if it would even be a race tonight. And maybe this is one of the costs to having a national party policy where everyone has to have the same view on that subject. I mean, do you think this will be a reminder to Democrats nationally that there are places where they could win if they moderated their view on that specific issue?
Well, but we've been, you know, it's interesting you should ask that question, Tucker, because I've been having people say that to me about Republicans all over the rest of the country for years. If they would just get off this anti-abortion, this pro-life stuff, they could win more races. I think once a person is declared on that issue, it's pretty hard to reverse yourself. I've seen it done. George H.W. Bush did it, you may recall, and
yes,
he was pro-abortion rights, and then he became a fan of adoption, and he was able to stake out that territory and survive and carry on. In Jones's case, I'm not sure. He's pretty far out there on that issue, and I think you're right that it certainly is a problem for him because it has proved abortion to be the most enduring moral issue of our time, and maybe will for the foreseeable future. And I think it has been a drag on his prospects. And if we, when all is said and done tonight, when we look back, we might well conclude, as you suggest, that that was the issue that hindered him and cost him the seat.
I think he could have won easily if they would have moderated a little bit. Britt, thank you. I hope you'll stay with us.
You bet.
So this race is closed, and the results are being tabulated right now. How will Fox make the call? For that, we're joined by chief political anchor and special report host Bret Baier, along with Martha MacCallum, host of The Story with Martha MacCallum, right before us. So I don't even know who to ask first, so I'll throw it to both of you. How, in a race like this where the nation's watching, and it's far more confusing than it typically would be in an Alabama Senate race, how do you decide when we know?
So we have this new process, this cycle, this time. It's called Fox News Voter Analysis, and we have polls, questions that have been asked to voters today, polling all day and over the past few days about how they would vote and how they would react. Then we have that and the raw numbers coming in, and put that together, and our decision desk that's holed away in this room, in this building, not far from here, makes an educated decision about what's left and says this is possible. Right now, Tucker, this race is really close. And for the first time in a quarter century, a Democrat could win the Senate seat in Alabama. And Doug Jones is at least poised to do that after this topsy-turvy kind of race.
Yeah, I mean, it's unlikely to be one of those nights when you can call a state with 19 or 20% of the vote tabulated. It's much more likely that we're going to be here for a while, watching these numbers come in and making sure that that we know what we've got. And as with every state, the northern part of the state is very different than the southern part. You've got the cities. We wait for them to come in and extrapolate those numbers with the help of our decision desk, combined with these new not polls, analysis that we have of voters, which does online and does phone interviews and combines them. And we hope that they're going to prove to be quite telling.
So what you see on the screen, Tucker.
May I ask, how do you use that? So Fox has been asking people in Alabama all day their views on different issues. How do you incorporate that into your reporting? How does that inform you?
Well, it's similar to exit polls in that you get a sense for what's on people's minds. You get a sense in these polls, for example, that 50% of them said that they did believe the accusations of sexual misconduct that were leveled against Roy Moore. So you've got 50%. So that doesn't tell you a whole heck of a lot. It tells you that it's pretty split. We also learned, you were just discussing the issue of abortion with Britt. 53% said that's a very important barometer for them. So that's going to cause, some people who may have been leaning towards Doug Jones to pull back from that choice, given his record on that. So, these indications show us that this is very divided. I mean, this is a very tough choice for voters in Alabama. And I think in one way, Tucker, they know, of course, that this is going to reflect on them. Right? They're going to make a statement here, and they're extraordinarily independent, and they don't like the fact that the nation has been trying to tell them what they should think about this, and their voices are going to be heard momentarily.
And just to make sense of the numbers on the screen, you're seeing the first raw numbers come in, and that is the percentages of the first raw vote totals. Now, throughout the night, you'll see on the bottom of the screen those numbers change, and we'll put them up throughout the night as we get them coming in. We will take those raw numbers and the voter analysis that we've been doing, and the decision desk will be able to make a call as to who's going to win this race.
So right now it's 157 to 53. An eighth grade school president election. Thank you. That's great. And final question. When are we going to find out, would you say, if you could make a prediction about when?
This is tough. We tried that on election night.
We ended up being here when Fox and Friends started the next morning. So, we'll see, Tucker. You're going to have to stick around and find out.
It's close right now.
I can't wait. Bret, Martha, thank you.
Thanks, Tucker.
We'll have updates all night for you, obviously, on the Alabama Senate race. Results will stay up on the screen throughout the show and the evening. Sexual harassment allegations not the only drama in the news right now. Almost every day brings out more signs the Department of Justice could be ideologically compromised in its investigations. We don't want to think that, but the evidence is mounting. Until this month, Bruce Orr was a senior official at DOJ. He was demoted after it was discovered that he failed to disclose meetings with officials at Fusion GPS. You'll remember that's the firm responsible for the infamous Trump dossier. It has now been revealed that Orr's wife actually works for Fusion GPS. Congressman David Cicilline represents Rhode Island. He's been following this case from the very beginning, and we've been talking to him about it. Congressman, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So the whole point of an independent counsel is to assure the public that things are on the level, that this is not a politically motivated investigation, so everyone can have confidence in the justice system, and that's a goal I think we all agree with. Given that, the daily revelation that people integral to this investigation are partisan shakes the public's faith. Is this a concern for you?
Well, I think, first of all, we have to say that there's an ongoing effort by my Republican colleagues to undermine the integrity of this investigation. We saw it in the Judiciary Committee last week. Let's start off with the facts. Robert Mueller, respected by everyone, Republican and Democrat alike, a career prosecutor, confirmed unanimously as FBI director. When he was confirmed, we had leading Republicans like McConnell say, I have a lot of confidence in Bob Mueller. I think he was a good choice. Newt Gingrich, Robert Mueller is a superb choice to be special counsel. His reputation is impeccable for honesty and integrity. The media should now calm down. The list goes on and on. These are professionals who take an oath to the Constitution.
Okay, but I agree with you.
So and they have a responsibility to do that. If they don't, if they show any partisanship, any bias, any favoritism, they're subjected not only to removal from the case, they're subjected to losing their license to practice law.
But there are so many. Look, there is an effort.
No, there are two examples
of
people who were.
I have it right here. Look, here's the point. There is an effort to undermine Mueller's credibility.
And why is
I've
that?
not been part of that.
No, I know you haven't. No, I'm not talking about you. But here's the thing.
But
the American people have to wonder. There's an ongoing effort to undermine the FBI. We had a hearing before the Judiciary
Let's just
Committee.
address the facts as they are, and then we can assess. So take Bruce Orr. So he's the Associate Deputy Attorney General. He lied about having meetings with Fusion GPS where his wife worked, which is at the very center of this entire case.
Tucker,
that doesn't rattle you a little bit?
Tucker, what I really want to focus on is that when the special counsel learned of both Mr. Orr and Mr. Strotz, they removed them from the case. One of them was demoted, but they were both removed. So I think
what about Aaron Zebley?
But that's evidence. But that's evidence that Robert Mueller is doing his job.
I guess
protecting the integrity of the investigation.
Wait a second.
Can I ask someone to talk about?
We've got a whole list of lawyers who work for Mueller who either represented the Clintons personally or gave money to their campaign.
Tucker, you know this.
If
prosecutors all over the country
have
political views. What they're required to do is set aside their personal beliefs, their ideology, their views on issues, and impartially do their work. Prosecutors do that all over America.
I agree with you. However, this is the most politically sensitive case in this generation.
And what we ought to be.
Jeannie Rhee represented the Clinton Foundation. Of all the lawyers in town, you hire someone who represented the Clinton Foundation for an investigation to Donald Trump? Are you joking?
Again, this is
a
set of extraordinary professionals who risk their lives defending the American people.
How has she risked her life?
Keeping us safe all over. No, all I'm saying is.
Oh, so they're an authority, so we just genuflect before that?
I'm not. There are rules in place that prohibit prosecutors or people who work for the FBI to depart from the oath that they took. If they do that, they're subject to removal from the case. They can be sanctioned as well. They can lose their license to practice law.
But hold on. If you really care, as you say you do, about the impartiality of this, then respond to Mueller's. Hold on. Mueller has appointed Andrew Weissman, his deputy, in this. Weissman is the one who emailed Sally Yates when she turned down the travel ban how in awe he was of her. He is a Democratic donor.
Tucker, that clearly is not disqualifying. What you have to determine is can this person impartially and properly set aside their personal views and do their work as a professional.
If this were an investigation to Hillary Clinton, and
this
90%
is not an investigation of Hillary Clinton.
If it were, and 90% of the lawyers that the IG hired, the independent counsel hired, were Republican donors and had worked for Trump, he would say, what is this?
We could say Robert Mueller is a Republican. Rod Rosenstein, the one who...
Rod Rosenstein is a liberal Democrat. No, you're wrong.
No, I said Robert Mueller.
Wrong.
I said Robert Mueller.
Rod Rosenstein is a Democrat and a McConnell
I don't know whether he is a Democrat or not. Robert Mueller is definitely a Republican. My point is,
he's Republican?
prosecutors are required to set aside their political views, their ideology. These are men and women and professionals who subject themselves to disciplinary action, and they can lose their license to practice.
Two of them have already been
nothing
pulled
here. In
off
fact, the only reason
you're
Tucker,
filibustering.
No, Tucker. The only thing that's changed is Robert Mueller's getting closer to the president. All of a sudden,
then this is just a hack job. It's
No,
exactly
it's
what I
not a
thought
hack
it
job.
was
These
in the
are
beginning. You're
it's
not
not.
addressing my specific questions about specific people.
What has
You're
changed?
saying they risk their lives
What has
for
changed
me?
in your assessment?
Nothing. I have been slow to judge because there's been a parade of people come out. Two have been demoted for partisan activities while working on the investigation.
Robert Mueller is someone who is respected by Republicans, Democrats, and
not by me anymore.
He's assembled a team of extraordinary professionals who are doing their work.
You're repeating a talking point.
It's not a talking point. I'm telling you.
A team of extraordinary professionals.
They are. These are men and women who risk their lives. So you can laugh about it, but you can laugh about them. But I'm telling you what, you trade places and be an FBI agent and risk their lives to keep America safe, which is what they do. And undermining them and attacking the rule of law in this country is a shameful
questions.
thing.
I get it.
No.
Just they're extraordinary
Just attack the FBI because you're not going to like what he's doing.
I'm an American citizen, and I have a right to ask questions.
Of course you do, and so do I. And it's either to set up an
don't try to bully me with this.
No one can bully you. No one can bully you.
We're out of time, Congressman. But come back anytime.
Thanks for having me.
Because this is an interesting topic. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand poses as Congress's conscience on the question of sexual harassment and sexual assault. But is she? We'll discuss that next. And, of course, throughout the hour, we're going to keep you updated on Alabama. The polls there have just closed. The outcome left to be decided. We'll let you know. The state of Alabama, the results are coming in now, trickling in. They'll be on your screen all night. The race, for the first time in many years, could go either way at any time, so stay right here. We'll be updating you all night. Ryan Lizza of The New Yorker was fired yesterday, the latest casualty of the hunt for sexual harassers in American life. The magazine described Lizza's crime as, quote, improper sexual conduct, but it did not elaborate beyond that, nor did it name his accuser, who remains anonymous. Lizza issued a statement proclaiming his innocence. Quote, The New Yorker was unable to cite a company policy that was violated, he wrote. But that didn't matter. Lizza lost the job he'd held for over a decade anyway. He was suspended from his role at CNN, as well as his adjunct professorship at Georgetown. Ryan Lizza's in his 40s, but his career is effectively over now. The same has happened to plenty of other people recently on the basis of sexual harassment claims. In just the past week, TV chef Mario Batali was pulled off the air. Steve Edwards of Good Day LA is gone. 5 analysts at NFL Network and ESPN were suspended. And, of course, Al Franken is about to leave the Senate. There are a lot of other ones, too. Now, maybe all of these people are guilty as charged. Sexual harassment is real and apparently common. So it could be. How common is it? Well, it would be nice to know that, but that would require facts, which are one of the many things these cases lack, along with names and dates and the specific nature of the crimes alleged. Details matter because, in the end, they add up to proof. Proof is what ensures that the innocent aren't punished, and protecting the innocent is the very essence of Western justice. Unfortunately, we are moving in the opposite direction, toward a standard where to be accused means to be judged guilty. This is not a defense of sexual harassment, obviously, just an acknowledgement that it's terrifying, really terrifying. In a recent piece for Politico, Emily Yaffe explains how we got here. It turns out it did not start with Harvey Weinstein exactly, but with the last administration. At the beginning of this decade, the Obama administration launched a campaign to stamp out sexual assault on college campuses. The goal was laudable, obviously, but the means were horrifying. Using Title IX as a regulatory cudgel, the administration pressured colleges to lower the burden of proof for sexual misconduct and urged them to create kangaroo courts that denied basic rights to students like access to counsel and the ability to face and question accusers. Within a few years, it became normal to view sexual misconduct as a special class of crime where no presumption of innocence was warranted. Accusation equaled conviction. 2 years ago, Democratic Congressman Jared Polis of Colorado put it as clearly as anyone ever has. Quote, if there are 10 people who have been accused and maybe 1 or 2 did it, it seems better to get rid of all 10 people. In other words, it's okay to punish the innocent. If you want an omelet, you've got to break some eggs. That was Robespierre's line. It's been echoed by totalitarian dictators ever since. It's pretty jarring to hear it from a U.S. congressman in this country. On campuses, students were humiliated and expelled on the basis of no evidence they had done anything wrong. In one case, at the University of North Dakota, a student was tossed out for sexual assault even as his accuser was prosecuted for lying to police about the same incident. Now, at the time, many on the right allied with civil libertarians to decry this as a basic attack on the precepts of justice, which it was. And yet now those same groups are silent mostly. Some are even cheering along because this time the victims primarily are liberal journalists, politicians, and media personalities. A lot of these seem like odious people anyway, and it's gratifying to see them hounded from public life. That's a mistake. Principles matter, even when they protect people you don't like. If some annoying magazine writer can lose everything over an anonymous, unproven charge, it can happen to you too, and it might. In a brilliant new piece in The American Interest, a writer called Claire Berlinski sums up the reality we're now living in. Quote, "It now takes only one accusation to destroy a man's life. Just one for him to be tried and sentenced in the court of public opinion, overnight costing him his livelihood and social respectability. We are on a frenzied extrajudicial warlock hunt that does not pause to parse the difference between rape and stupidity. The punishment for sexual harassment is so grave that clearly this crime, like any other serious crime, requires an unambiguous definition. We have nothing of the sort." Well, we're living through a moral panic, obviously. And as Berlinski points out, we have seen this before. Again, a quote from her. "Not long ago, we firmly convinced ourselves that our children were being ritually raped by Satanists. In recent years especially, we've become prone to replacing complex thought with shallow slogans. We live in times of extremism and black and white thinking. We should have the self-awareness to suspect that events of recent weeks may not be an aspect of our growing enlightenment, but rather our growing enamorment with extremism." Now, you may not agree with her point, but I think you'll acknowledge it's smart and thoughtful and worth debating. Berlinski says she could barely get it published. Editors kept turning it down. In this environment, they were too afraid to print her essay, and that tells you everything. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York has tried to make herself a leader in this sexual assault crusade and recently got into a tiff with the president over it. Michelle Jawando is an attorney at the Center for American Progress, and she joins us tonight. Michelle, thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I just, look, I'll put up a lot. Being lectured by Kirsten Gillibrand about sexual harassment after she spent, 10 years covering for Bill Clinton, who was credibly accused 2 decades ago of sexual assault, rape, is too much. I mean, why should I take my moral cues on this question from someone who's as cynical as that?
So Senator Gillibrand was actually in a bipartisan Bible study group when her phone rang when she found out that the President of the United States, with the biggest bully pulpit in the world, was attacking her on Twitter. And so I think the question and where we could really begin the conversation is that really the decorum that we want our president to be engaging? And as president
no.
with daughters, he needs to be able to say, there's an epidemic in this country around sexual assault and sexual harassment, and I want to do something to fix
But why should, look, I'm against the president tweeting about anything
that
ever.
That was great. I'm so happy to hear.
But I'm against most people tweeting about anything ever. I'm against tweeting.
Yeah.
But let me just say this.
Anti-Twitter.
Why, of everyone in Washington, should someone who covered for Bill Clinton, who refused to say anything about her colleague Anthony Weiner when asked about his sexual misdeeds, who has covered for Linda Sarsour, who's just an open misogynist who wants Sharia law and has attacked the victims of female genital mutilation, why would that person get the right to lecture me about anything?
Tucker, Kirsten Gillibrand, you know that I've worked in the Senate with her for many years before I went to the Center for American Progress. And one of the things that I am most proud of to this day is the bipartisan work we did on the 9/11 health bill. That was something we did with Senator Coburn, who was one of the most conservative, fiscally and otherwise, Republicans in the Senate. And the reason why Republicans work with Senator Gillibrand is because they know she's a hard worker. She's working
I don't doubt that for a second. I'm not attacking her as a person. I'm just saying, why does she get to lecture the rest of us on a subject that she hasn't proven faithful on. And I want to ask you a question I've always wondered. So she's got a full rating from Planned Parenthood, which has said out loud, yeah, we'll commit sex-selective abortions designed to basically cull female babies. If you're a feminist, how in the world can you support sex-selective abortions? I've never understood that. A sincere question.
So I appreciate the question. I don't think that that's actually true, Tucker.
It is true.
If you go and you do any research, I don't think anyone would say that Planned Parenthood is pushing that as
They're not. They said that they are not. That they are okay with it. They've said it out loud.
Is to provide contraceptive care, health coverage for women in this country. And I know, as difficult as it is for us to recognize, Roe is a constitutionally protected right.
Does sex-selective abortions bother you?
And if we are really going to be honest in this country, we have to recognize, like, abortion is a right protected by this Constitution.
Sex-selective abortions, and we're feminists now. Okay.
But Senator Gillibrand, you know, back to the
We're out of time. I'll give you the last word, though, since you're so.
I will say this: Senator Gillibrand is someone who I've seen one of the hardest working people across the aisle. And if we as a country really want to value women, we have to figure out this issue around sexual assault.
Yeah, I totally believe that. I've got 3 daughters. I'm all for valuing women.
That's
I'm
why
just
we
not
can
for
fix
Kirsten
this.
Gillibrand, because I think she's false. But thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
The family members of the New York City bombing suspects say they are outraged by how the police have treated them. Do they have a right to be? Plus, new results from Alabama's special Senate election continue to come through Fox throughout the night, and we'll bring them to you as soon as they do. We're able to make a call in that contest. Well, yesterday, an Islamic extremist, Kayed Allah, tried to set off a suicide bomb in a subway tunnel near Times Square in New York City. He succeeded only in injuring himself. His family, though, remarkably says they're outraged, not by what he did, but by what the police did in the aftermath of the crime. In a statement, his family said this, quote, "We're outraged by the behavior of law enforcement officials during this investigation. Today, we've seen our children as young as 4 years old held out in the cold, detained as their parents were questioned. One teenage relative was pulled out of high school classes and interrogated without a lawyer, without his parents. These are not the actions we expect from our justice system. We hope to see better in the days and weeks to come." Amr Zahar is a law professor at the University of Detroit Mercy, and he joins us tonight. Thanks a lot for coming on.
Hey, good evening, Tucker.
So it seems like this is a little baffling. I had trouble believing it was real, actually, when I first read it. So you find out that someone in your family has attempted to kill strangers in the name of jihad in a subway station, and you issue a statement saying that you've been wronged somehow? How does this work?
Well, I mean, let's be clear. In that statement, they also said that they were heartbroken by the attack. So to characterize it as they were just attacking the police is wrong. But I think there is an issue, right, of bias in enforcement. We didn't see the police conduct this sort of treatment against the family of Dylan Roof or Robert Deere, James Holmes, right? They just view Muslims and their families as possible suspects, as suspicious all the time. No, we know.
I wonder. Now, why do you think that is? I wonder. Have you seen the numbers on this? I mean, let's be totally real.
What numbers?
The numbers on likelihood of committing a terror attack in a public place, particularly a suicide bomb in a subway station, are a little higher for Muslims than they are for Presbyterians. I'm not attacking Muslims. Some of them are friends of mine. But let's be honest here. Let's stop lying all the time.
Well, the media thinks a terror attack's only a terror attack if it's committed by a Muslim anyway, all right? I mean, we saw Stephen Paddock, for instance, in Vegas. Look how the media treated his brother days after the attack. He became a superstar. It turns out he's actually a criminal. He was arrested on child pornography charges a month ago.
Not on this show he was. But look, here's what baffles me. So you come into this country. You come into this country if you're this guy's family from Bangladesh, okay? And you come in here through the grace and kindness of the American people. You're here like 20 minutes, and all of a sudden you're complaining about bias against you and our justice system. It's like, you just got here. Where's the gratitude?
I'm not talking
about you. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about, needless to say, I'm talking about the family of the bomber. These people issue a statement like, you know, we're the victims here. It seems like in a normal country, you would say to people who just arrived, like, you should apologize profusely and stop complaining about bias.
Let's hold on a second. There's no indication that they didn't cooperate with law enforcement. In fact, Muslims across the country cooperate with law enforcement all the time. I think I'm looking at the bigger picture here, which is there is a bias in law enforcement. Look what happened to the clock boy down in Texas, who they said that he was committing a hoax bomb crime. He was questioned for 4 hours without a lawyer. They tried to say he was committing a hoax bomb, and it's not a hoax if you're telling everybody it's a clock.
You think he's the only one who's
they didn't think he had a bomb?
Questioned without a lawyer? I mean, look, here's the point. Do you see something wrong with a system, our system, that invites people from impoverished foreign countries who show up here and immediately learn that they're victims and part of an interest group that's at war with the larger society? And that's clearly what happened in this case. Do you see that as a recipe for disunion in a country at all?
Look, I think it's important to criticize law enforcement when it acts in a biased way. Now, in this situation, we see, as in many situations when it comes to Muslim Americans,
station. I mean, gee whiz.
Nobody's saying he's not guilty. Of course, he's guilty and should go to jail for the rest of his life. But when you treat his family immediately as accomplices, when you don't do that with white criminals, then we have a problem.
They do it with white criminals. I just had a friend who had his door knocked down by the FBI. You don't know anything. Maybe that's part of your problem with the way people are treated in this country.
Stephen Paddock's brother was a celebrity on the news. Stephen Paddock's brother was treated like a celebrity on the news
jail
for 3 days.
Something horrible now. Anyway, this is
now he is, but they didn't know that when after the shooting, and he was treated like a celebrity on the news. You're just wrong about this.
No wonder people hate this country. Professor, thank you. I'm serious. They're taught to hate this country, and it's distressing. Dan Bongino is a former NYPD officer, and he joins us tonight. So, Dan, I just want to analyze this in a sober way. I'm getting a little spun up here. Is what you know about how the family of this lunatic, about how they were treated, is it inconsistent with the way law enforcement acts in general? Do you see this as an example of bias from what you know?
No, Tucker. And that guy has no idea what he's talking about. I know he's not on the air anymore. I get it. Maybe it's a little unfair. But he had his platform. Now I'm going to take a shot at him. That guy's crazy. That is not law enforcement's biased. Does he have any idea how the process works? Let me explain how it actually works for reasonable people out there, not that maniac, okay? Here's how it works. When a bomb goes off in the city, you have this thing called an exigent circumstances contingency for Miranda, where you don't have to Mirandize people because you know what, Tucker? Another bomb could go off and somebody could be killed. Does he not know that? Has he never read? I mean, does he come on the air completely, entirely unprepared?
So just to clarify for our viewers, so in those cases where the police are speaking to people without Mirandizing, without a lawyer present, they're not doing so to gather evidence in order to charge that person, but to find out if there's an imminent threat in some other direction. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Thank you for saying that, Tucker. One, Miranda, just to be clear, if you're in custody and you're interrogated, plus those statements are going to be used in a proceeding, in a court proceeding later, then yes, you have to Mirandize people. Right. If your primary interest, Tucker, is saving the lives of people who could be killed in an additional bombing, what did you think the cops were going to do to the family of this Bangladeshi man? You think they were going to show up with a plate of tea and crumpets and sit down? I mean, is that guy kidding me? What did he think was going to happen? Do you have any time to go there and say, hey, folks, listen, can I give you a back rub? You go there. You act as professionally as you can, of course, as I know the NYPD does. I work there. But you say, we've got a problem. A member of your family is alleged to have just blown himself up in a subway. We need information, and we need it now. Is there anyone else involved? And this is what, the family's outraged, Tucker. You know what? We're outraged. You know what we're outraged about? This care attorney who came on afterwards and gave the statement, by the way, who jumps out in front of the screen afterwards every time, worried about phony mass outbreaks of Islamophobia. And Americans are also outraged about being the most compassionate country on earth when it comes to immigration. And yet we get slapped in the face every time, like we're the mutts here, not this guy who tried to kill people.
It's totally right. We import more than 1 million people from the third world every year. The second they arrive, the left convinces them they're victims, and the rest of the country hates them, and it's a disaster. Dan, thank you for your sober analysis of that.
Thanks, Tucker.
We're going to have a lot more on the latest developments from the state of Alabama just ahead, plus a special appearance from a CNN host and spiritual guru, a Swami some of us have been following for years. We'll let you in on it. It's Chris Cuomo. Okay, we'll be right back. This is a Fox News alert. Votes are being tallied as we speak in the Alabama special Senate election to replace Jeff Sessions. Fox's Peter Ducey has been on the road for quite some time. He's in Montgomery tonight, and he's got new Fox News voter analysis to share. Peter, what do you got?
Tucker, the Moore campaign is telling me that they think today is going to break all kinds of special election in Alabama turnout records, and that if it's everywhere all across the Yellowhammer State, that is very good for them. But if the turnout is concentrated in the big cities, not so good for the Republican Roy Moore. Now, as for the people who did turn out, we've got this Fox News voter analysis that finds that a majority, 51%, have a favorable opinion of the Democrat Doug Jones. That is a tick higher than the 50% who have a favorable opinion of Judge Moore's most famous endorser, President Trump, and considerably higher than the 38% who have a favorable opinion of Judge Moore. But when it comes to voters who think that it is very important which party controls the U.S. Senate, 55% favor Roy Moore, 42% favor the Democrat Doug Jones. And we are told that the Democrat Jones has already shown up to his election night party at a hotel near his house in Birmingham. His campaign manager says they worked till the last possible minute, 7 o'clock local, trying to earn votes. And our producer on the ground there says hometown hero Charles Barkley is at that event tonight after appearing with Jones at a separate rally. Now, as for Roy Moore, he is not here yet, but we do expect to see him in Montgomery at some point. We also expect to see the former White House chief strategist, who has been the second most famous after President Trump, Moore backer. That is Steve Bannon. And if Moore pulls out a victory, we expect there to be a lot of credit given to President Trump. But if he does not, we expect a lot of blame to be directed at Mitch McConnell. Tucker.
Peter Ducey on the ground in Alabama. Thanks a lot, Peter. Election coverage will continue in just a few minutes. Now, regular viewers of this show know that we've fallen pretty hard for Chris Cuomo, that's CNN's morning show host and poet laureate. What began, we'll admit, as gentle mocking has now turned into affection and, honestly, awe as we watched video after video of Chris Cuomo's stream of consciousness musings, often delivered while sweating and grunting in the gym.
You guys always say that you want to get in on the process of what's going behind the scenes. Well, you see that flash? The New York Times is here, taking a picture of me, while Rose is taking a picture of me, and now we're taking a picture of the New York Times taking a picture of me while I'm talking to you. This is something that we're doing for the New York Times, a piece that's going to be very short because it's about style, and I clearly have none.
If we were ever to adopt an Eastern religion, Chris Cuomo would be our Swami. And yet, even by our high standards, a recent piece in the TV news blog Mediaite stood out for the quivering intensity of its love for Chris Cuomo. In case you missed it, here's the lead. CNN's New Day host Chris Cuomo's sharp legal mind was on full display Tuesday morning, it began. Wait, sharp legal mind? Didn't Cuomo once falsely declare that the Constitution prohibits hate speech? Yep, not so sharp. But that didn't slow the author of the Mediaite piece, a man named Colby Hall. Hall, in a flourish North Korean PR professionals would envy, slobbered on about Cuomo's, quote, well-reasoned and dispassionate manner that viewers have come to expect. Now, the question isn't, is this journalism? Obviously, it's not journalism. The real question is this stalking? Does it cross a line from fawning to creepy? Should Chris Cuomo be concerned that an editor at Mediaite clearly has posters of him in his bedroom? We can't answer that question. We can only wish Chris Cuomo the best. Well, racial issues managed to come to the top of the Alabama Senate race, even though both candidates are white. How did that happen? We'll discuss it next. This is a Fox News alert. Votes are being tallied as we speak in Alabama, where Democrat Doug Jones is trying to achieve a surprise, and it would be a surprise, victory over Republican Roy Moore in one of the most Republican states in the country. John Daniel Davidson is the senior correspondent at The Federalist, and he joins us tonight. John, thanks for coming on. So other than the coastal elites hate Alabama, which they always have, and that's even more obvious than it's ever been, what have we learned from this?
Well, I think we've learned that when Mitch McConnell and the GOP leadership in Washington tries to handpick a candidate and meddle in a state election, things can blow up in their face. Right. That's exactly what happened here. Mitch McConnell very much wanted Luther Strange to be the next senator from Alabama, and instead he's really given the people of Alabama a very difficult choice, that a lot of Alabamans think there is no good solution to this problem they have between Doug Jones and Roy Moore.
So it's really like trying to force your daughter to date someone and she goes like way in the other direction.
That's right, exactly. I talked to a number of people in Alabama, party officials and campaign people, who told me that during the GOP primaries, the word was out among all the political consulting firms that if you do any work for any candidate other than Luther Strange, you will be blacklisted. Whoa. By the GOP. Now, this was repeated to me by multiple people who didn't talk to one another, that this was sort of understood,
That's
during the
fascinating.
GOP primary.
That's amazing. Not surprising at all. Thank you for that tidbit, John. Really interesting.
You're
Thanks
welcome.
for joining us. We're continuing to monitor the election results in Alabama, which are coming in right now. Stay with us. The vote in the state of Alabama, so far the results remain neck and neck. Either candidate could win. Keep watching Fox for the latest throughout the night until that race is called. Meanwhile, Good Night from Washington will have more Alabama election coverage throughout the evening. We'll see you tomorrow.